Hi and welcome to Synapse. In today's video, we are going to study the anatomy of the anterior abdominal wall and the inguinal ligament. Now, why is this topic so important? Why should we know the anatomy of the abdominal wall? It's because we need to plan our incisions for any of the abdominal surgeries and also for proper closure of the abdomen after the surgery. As you are aware that inadequate or faulty technique of closure will result in incisional hernias. So that will be a complication following the abdominal surgery. So hence we need to know the anatomy thoroughly. So let's begin. Okay, so about the abdominal wall. So the abdominal wall is constituted by four muscles. So let's see what are the four muscles. So first is the rectus abdominis. Okay, so this muscle takes its origin from the anterior surface of the costal cartilage of ribs number 5, 6 and 7. Okay, so it's going to take origin from this point and then it's going to run downwards and get inserted into the pubic crest. Okay, so the rectus abdominis muscle, also known as your the muscles which are responsible for the abs. Okay, so when you work out, it is this muscle which becomes more prominent. So the muscle fibers are going to run from up towards the pubic crest. Okay, and so this muscle is going to have the tendinous intersections. There are 3 tendinous intersections. Okay, so one at the level of the xiphoid, then is the at the level of the umbilicus. Okay, is the umbilicus, this is your xiphoid. Okay, and the other one is in between the xiphoid and the umbilicus. Okay, so that is going to divide the muscle into 4 components. Okay, now it's important to know that the tendinous intersections that are present are attached to the anterior rectus sheath and not the posterior rectus sheath. Okay, we will see what is the rectus sheath in a while. So the first muscle we studied about is the rectus abdominis. The second muscle we're going to talk about is the external oblique. EO stands for external oblique. Now the origin of this muscle is from the outer surface of the lower 8 ribs. Okay, follow with me, demonstrate on your body. Okay, so hold your palm against your lower ribs. Okay, the origin is from the outer surface of the lower 8 ribs, and then it's going to run downwards and medially. The fibers are going to run downwards medially. Okay, it's like as if you're placing your hands inside your pocket. Okay, the fibers run downwards and medially, and they get inserted into the linea alba, the pubic crest, the pubic tubercle, and the anterior half of the iliac crest. Yes, it might be difficult, so you just imagine with me. Okay, so what is linea alba? Linea alba is a central tendinous structure, okay, which is present due to the condensation of the aponeurosis of the abdominal muscles, which is present in the midline. So this line that I'm drawing is the midline that constitutes your linea alba. So, and if this is the anterior superior iliac spine and this is your iliac crest, let's say, and here is your pubic tubercle. Okay, so this thing here is your inguinal ligament that you're all well aware of. So ASIS, anterior superior iliac spine, and this is the pubic tubercle. Okay, so the fibers are going to, if here are the ribs, okay, and then I'll change my color over here. So the fibers are going to run downwards medially like that. Okay, and they are going to get inserted where? Into the linea alba here. Okay, the pubic tubercle here. Okay, and part of the anterior part of the iliac, and this one, the iliac crest. Okay, so that is what's going to happen. So that is about the external oblique. So let's just cover this up here. In the lower part, you know that this is constituted by the aponeurosis. So the higher part of the muscle, so here you have the actual muscle fibers. Lower down, you're going to have the aponeurosis. Okay, so you know that this aponeurosis is going to get folded upon itself, becomes thickened in the lower part, forming the inguinal ligament. Okay, that's that. And let's move on to the next muscle, that is the internal oblique. Now this internal oblique, again imagine with me, the origin is coming from the iliac crest. Okay, so there's a difference. See that external oblique inserted onto the iliac crest, but the internal oblique takes origin from the iliac crest, okay, and also from the lateral 2/3 of the inguinal ligament, and posteriorly it's coming from what is known as the lumbar fascia. Okay, so let's put that down here. If this is the internal oblique, okay, so again we have a ASIS, the pubic tubercle, and then here we have the inguinal ligament. So this is our iliac crest. Okay, this is our midline. Okay, so the fibers are taking origin, okay, from the anterior part of the iliac crest, okay, in the lateral 2/3 of the inguinal ligament, right, and posteriorly it's also coming from the lumbar fascia. So this is how the fibers are coming. Okay, so they are going to run upwards and medially. Just imagine that these fibers run perpendicular to the fibers of the external oblique. Okay, so these are going to go upwards and medially. So now where will they get inserted? The fibers will get inserted in the linea alba like that. Okay, and some fibers get inserted into the pubic tubercle as well. So that is how the internal oblique fibers are running. Okay, so I'm going to show you a diagram from Netters, which is really good, but this is just for the understanding so that you know how the fibers are running. Okay, so now we know the origin and the insertion of the two main muscles. Okay, the fourth one is the transversus abdominis muscle. So what happens here is that this muscle is going to again origin from the lumbar fascia, the anterior 2/3 of the iliac crest, the lateral third of the inguinal ligament, just like the internal oblique, and also the deep surface of the costal cartilages. Okay, so we know that external oblique is coming from the external surface of the rib. Now this is coming from the deep surface of the lower 6 ribs. Okay, it's going to come from the inner surface, so the deep surface of the lower 6 ribs, and then it is going to also take origin from the iliac crest and the lateral 2/3 of the inguinal ligament. And where will it insert? Similarly, like internal oblique, it's going to get inserted into the linea alba, the pubic tubercle, as well as the pubic crest, right? So this is the basic description of the 4 muscles which constitute the anterior abdominal wall. So now let's have a look at this diagram. So this is a pretty beautiful diagram from Netters, which you'll find in the atlas, but here for our purposes I have kind of removed the labelings, so we will try to label the important structures here. So what you're going to see towards the left of the screen here, this is your rectus abdominis. Okay, so this is our rectus abdominis muscle. So just revising our origin. Okay, it's from the 5th, 6th, the 7th ribs. Okay, from the costal cartilage. Yes, it's going to run down and get inserted over the pubic tubercle. Okay, here we have removed a part of the muscle to reveal the vessels underneath. So just trust me that these fibers are going to go down and then insert onto the pubic tubercle. Then, if you remember, I mentioned about the tendinous intersection. So this one here, this is the tendinous intersection. Here is another one, and here will be another one. So there are 3. Okay, one I said is at the xiphoid. Okay, somewhere up here, and there's one at the level of the umbilicus, and the other one is in between these 2. Okay, so these vessels that you're seeing is underneath the muscle, so they have they've scooped out the muscle, and that's how you're seeing these vessels underneath. So the vessels that are coming from the top, okay, what is labeled as 1 is the superior epigastric vessels. Okay, and the similar thingy which is coming from the below, the 5th one, is the inferior epigastric vessels. inferior epigastric vessels. So as you can see, they are going to anastomose just below your rectus abdominis. Okay, so that's that. Moving on, this one which is exposed here is nothing but your external oblique aponeurosis. Okay, this is the outermost layer, correct? So as you can see here, this is the chopped layer. So the first one here is the external oblique muscle. You know, as it comes medially, it's going to become all tendinous. The white thing that you're seeing is nothing but the aponeurosis. So below this, the next layer here is your internal oblique. Okay, it's the internal oblique. And the muscle layer that you're going to see here, the major, that's the labeled as 3, this is nothing but your transversus abdominis. Okay, I hope this picture is clear. So we'll come back to this picture in a while. So going back, so now we need to know something known called as the rectus sheath. Okay, this concept is pretty important. What is the rectus sheath? Right, so the rectus muscle, that's the rectus abdominis, is enclosed by a sheath, okay, which is present anteriorly and posteriorly. Now this is not consistent at different levels. Okay, so what we need to know is what happens to the rectus sheath at 3 different levels. So one is known as at the level of the costal margin. Okay, next we're going to see at the level or above, basically I'll say level above the arcuate line, and then the level below the arcuate line. Okay, so below the arcuate line. Okay, so now we are talking so much about the arcuate line. So what is this arcuate line? It is nothing but a crescentic, arcuate meaning arc-like, right? So it's a crescentic or a semicircular line. So that is also known as the arcuate line of Douglas. So that is present at the lower border of the aponeurotic sheath. Okay, so it is the lowermost part of the posterior sheath, posterior rectus sheath. Now where is this present? It is present halfway between the umbilicus and the pubic symphysis. Okay, so if I'll just draw this here, this is our costal margin, this is the umbilicus, and this is a pubic symphysis, let's say. So it is present midway, okay, or halfway between our umbilicus as well as the pubic symphysis. So this is the arcuate line. Okay, this is what it is. Okay, it is nothing but the lower ending of the lowermost part of the posterior rectus sheath. Okay, fine. So what is happening at the level of the costal margin? See, this is a rectus muscle. Now we know that it's going to take origin from the 5th, 6th, 7th costal, this one, what's that, the cartilaginous part of the 5th, 6th, 7th rib, right? So we don't have the internal oblique and the transverse abdominis coming higher up there, correct? Because the fibers take origin somewhere below. It's coming from the lumbar fascia and your iliac crest and so on. So it is not present so higher up. So what is there at this level? Okay, so I'll just write here you have the external oblique. Only the external oblique is there. So this is the midline. So the external oblique muscle is going to form this aponeurosis. So this is what is forming the anterior rectus sheath in the at the costal margin. Now, what happens at this level above the arcuate line? Here what is happening is that we have all the 3 muscles, correct? We have the external oblique, we have the external oblique, then we have the internal oblique, and then we have the transversus abdominis. Okay, similarly on this side as well. Okay, fine. So now the internal oblique fibers are going to split like that and covers the rectus muscle. Okay, similarly on the other side. So in the midline they're going to meet. So this is nothing but your linea alba. So the thing that I'm circling here is your linea alba. Fine, and this, the external oblique aponeurosis, is just going to blend here and form the anterior sheath, and your transverse abdominis muscle aponeurosis is going to blend with the posterior sheath. Okay, this is what is happening at the level which is above the arcuate line. Now below the arcuate line, we have just mentioned that arcuate line is the lowermost border or the ending of the posterior rectus sheath. That means there is no posterior rectus sheath below the arcuate line. So should I draw anything below it? Absolutely not. So all the three muscles are present now above the rectus muscle. Okay, so all of these three tendons are going to fuse. Okay, so it is present above the rectus sheath, and there is above the rectus muscle, and there's nothing below it. Okay, so what is it that you have here? You have what is called the transversalis fascia, okay, which is present everywhere else. Okay, so this is nothing, the blue line is the transversalis fascia. Okay, so this is regarding the rectus sheath at various levels, how it is formed. Okay, this is pretty important. Fine. Now after this, let us just move on to the inguinal ligament. As I have mentioned, that inguinal ligament is nothing but the infolding and the thickening of the lowermost part of the external oblique aponeurosis. Now the inguinal ligament is also called as the Paupert's ligament or Paupert's ligament. Paupert's ligament. So this is actually in true sense not a ligament. Okay, so you know the definition of ligament. This is not a ligament, this is just condensation of aponeurosis. So here is our ASIS, here is our pubic tubercle. So you know that this is present between these two structures. Okay, now this aponeurosis has, you know, the reflections. Okay, so some amount of it is going, this is the aponeurosis of the external oblique, which is going to extend a little upwards. This is known as the reflected part of the inguinal ligament. Okay, I say IL, I mean inguinal ligament. Now there's one more thing that needs a little bit of clarity here to understand the development of hernia 1 to the repair of hernia. Okay, without knowing this concept, it becomes pretty hard to understand the repair mechanisms. Okay, so what is it that I'm trying to tell here? See, here is the reflected part, right? And then if I complete this diagram, here you have the pelvis. Okay, I'll draw this. This is the obturator foramen. This is your pubic rama here. So there is a gap. There is a gap between your ligament, that is your inguinal ligament, and your pubic rama. Correct? So that there is a gap here. And what passes through this gap? We know those are your femoral vessels. So here you have your femoral, the vein, the artery, and you have the femoral canal, and then you have all the nerves coming below it. Okay, so I hope that is clear. Now what is it that I'm trying to tell here is that, thinking that you understood this concept, I'm erasing it. Once you've got the perspective, let me draw this again. So what happens is that this is the inguinal ligament, right? So some of the fibers are connecting the inguinal ligament medially with that of the periosteum of the pubic rama. Now this is known as your lacunar ligament. The lacunar ligament, also called as the Gimbert's ligament. Okay. Now after this, okay, there's some amount of condensation which is present over the pubic rami. Now this is called as the pectineal ligament. It's called the pectineal ligament, also known as the Cooper's ligament. Okay, Cooper's ligament. Now, so we have studied about the different parts of the inguinal ligament. So first is the condensation itself. Then we have seen the reflected part of the inguinal ligament. Then we have seen the lacunar ligament. Then we have see the pectineal ligament, also known as the Cooper's ligament. So these are the points which are of anatomical importance. Okay, so that's about the inguinal ligament. So in the next video we'll have a look at the inguinal canal. Okay, and how is inguinal canal different from the inguinal ligament, and what are the contents of the inguinal canal, and how exactly the inguinal hernia occurs. Okay, so hope you like the video, and I'll post the next video pretty soon. So hope you liked the video and found it useful. Like, share and subscribe. Thank you.